But when you think about the lessons of South, and it's like, what would we do if we didn't, when we don't have passion, when we don't have a reason for doing what we do in life, we don't have a vision that East brings us, and we
Yes.
don't have a fire to get us to move forward, or we don't feel confident, which we, many of us have struggled with issues of self-worth and not feeling good enough. Fire gives you that courage.
The
It's
extra
like,
strength.
yeah, you've got this. Just do it. Just do it.
Yeah.
And it's that the alchemical fire of facing your fear, just like what you were saying on our last shows, feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yeah.
That energy of fire, when you feel fear and you do it anyway, that is the stuff. That is the alchemical fire that
Yeah.
transforms a human being and causes them to expand
Yes.
in themselves and to learn something about themselves and to grow.
Yes. And it almost is like sometimes you have to burn things down to create new.
Yeah.
So I feel like going into the South also helps you sometimes break down those things or let those things go so you can. It's like you see things from a different
Yes.
perspective from the East, and then the South really helps you kind of refine that, move through
Mhm.
that, and bring up this new passion
It's like
within.
the phoenix rising out of the ashes, transforming
Yes.
into something new. You had to crumble the old,
Yes.
the old frame or the old constraints, the old beliefs. We were talking about this earlier because when people shift from the head to the heart, which is the longest journey you'll ever take in this
Yes.
life. We
Over and
talk
over and over again.
absolutely, man. But when you've created a life of shoulds and ought tos and guilts and shame and all of these different energies, and you're healing and you're coming back into yourself, you're coming home to yourself, to the heart, and you're saying, it's not what my heart wants. This is not how I want to express myself, or what is really in alignment with what my heart desires to create for my life. There is a turning point where when you really stand in your truth, where sometimes it'll feel like things are crumbling around you because it's
Yes.
like all those old systems and relationships and things that you created from that mindset of the shoulds and I ought to do this and guilt or shame or whatever,
Yeah.
it created a life. It created relationships, and there is a point of shedding where you have to kind of allow that to fall so that the phoenix can rise out of that fire and be aligned and then create a life that represents that energy of the
So
heart.
good.
And so it's like sometimes when that transition happens, we're like, oh my gosh, are we doing the right thing?
Yeah, it's a little
It
overwhelming,
can be a
and
little overwhelming.
people might view you as someone who maybe's losing your marbles a little bit.
Mhm.
But
Yes.
ultimately, we came here, and in the Aquarian age, it's all about living a heart-centered life. And sometimes we have to let go and fall back and surrender. We were talking about this. We're filming a Gifts of Spirit course. And at one
Yes.
point, we were talking about falling back and surrendering into your
Yeah, the
gifts
trust.
instead of trying to force it. And it's almost like when we can surrender and allow the fire to consume, and then we can move forward powerfully instead of trying to control where the fire goes. Because we know if something is
Mhm.
burning, you can't control that fire
Yeah.
most of the time, especially if it's in like a house. It's going to do its thing, it's going to be rampant, but it's so beautiful at the same time. When we can surrender and let go, we don't have control, but ultimately, we in this physical form want to control things. We want to control what it needs to look like versus what our spirit truly came here to learn. Sometimes is different than what our ego or what our mental mind thinks that it needs to be versus what we came here to experience.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And let's talk about what fire really is doing, because you think about what fire does is it transforms the fears, it transforms the shadows, but it also sheds light. So you think
Yes.
about when you're in that alchemical fire and you've created a vision for your life that's aligned with your heart, that's what East will help you
Uh-huh.
discover within yourself. And then you're taking those steps forward. You're like, I'm going to do this. it's like that, first of all, is monumental, because a lot of people, they'll have an idea about what they want to create, but there's so many things that are in the way of that creation. And then when they finally do it, they get so excited. And then you'll notice, like when people are creating their dreams in the beginning stages, you'll get so excited and then you'll freak out. You're like, holy cow, now I'm overwhelmed. I'm actually here.
Yeah.
I can't.
How is this
happening?
happening?
Like I'm actually creating my dreams now. And it's like, even at that point, when you're actually moving towards what you really want, you can go through a period of fear because you're not making excuses anymore. You're not hiding behind like why you shouldn't do something or blaming this person or that belief. You're just saying, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And then you're left with the true shadow.
Holy smokes. That's a lot.
Yeah. And that true shadow is usually the fear of failure, the fear that it won't be good enough, the fear like, what if it does fail? And then what am I going to say to the people when I made these changes? And then when you move through that fire of fear, that's what creates the transformation. You can't heal or grow unless you're willing to stand in the fire.
Absolutely.
You have to just do it.
I just keep thinking about, I'm so visual, but I was thinking about when one of our first calls, like maybe a month or so in, we were talking about shadow work and you were trying to help me walk through, because you never say, hey, this is it. You help guide this conversation. And I was so resistant to stepping into that shadow work, to stepping into releasing and letting go, because it defined who I was. And who I was before I started working with you. And we did all these sacred ceremonies and really dived into my multidimensional self. I was playing so small and I felt confined. I wanted to be bigger, but I didn't think that it was possible. And it scared me like to the next level of really being vulnerable and stepping into that space of letting go, because we spend our whole life, we have generations of labels that define who we are. And then all of a sudden, when it's not aligned with us, it's like, well, now what? This was who I've been told I need to be, how it's come down. How do I change that perspective? What's the next? Like, it was intimidating, but I went through a ton working with you in that space. And also, I wouldn't go back and change it for the world, because it was just what my spirit needed.
Absolutely. And you realize how confining those labels are. So it's like when you finally face the fears and you release those labels through that fire of transmutation or transformation, it's so liberating, because you're like, wait a minute, I can recreate myself, because really the truth of who I am is eternal anyway.
Yes.
This doesn't define me. I'm so much bigger than this. So now I get to choose in confidently with my power. Like I get to choose into something saying, is this aligned?
Is this my choice?
With my heart? Like, is this aligned with what my joy is? What I truly desired, what the beauty I want to create for my life. And then you choose in from a different angle. And then it's like you're able to allow that fire of fear to transform you, because you realize that those fears have nothing on you. They don't define you. You can be in the fire and the fear and yet still remember like who you are. And that's what gets you to the next level, because if you get caught up in that space, like what now, who am I, I'm like, that's when you need to come back to yourself and say, hun, you're not any of those things. That's why that whole burning of the labels was so important, that ceremony we did. Because in the beginning, when they burn all the ideas of their labels and their roles, every single person after that'd be like, what? It's like they're in this place of like in between, like, now what? You know, who am I? And it's at that point, I'm like, you just are. Thank you for watching Modern Sages. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
We are so grateful for your support. We have an Instagram account as well as on Facebook. We have our podcast, which is the Modern Sages podcast.
And we are so excited to launch our Gifts of Spirit classes in our Modern Sages Mystery School.
Absolutely. Oh, we're so excited. So we're going to link the information below in the show notes for more information about our mystery school.